All right, everybody, no fight talk on this video. I'm going to talk about the markets, and I'm going to talk about the economy, and I'm going to talk about policy, all the things I usually talk about. First, let me tell you, and you may or may not know this, that last Friday, September 28th, was the end of the fiscal year. That was the end of fiscal year 2018. Yesterday, Monday, began the new fiscal year of 2019. 2018 ended with a record amount of U.S. government spending, $4.71 trillion net spending. That eclipses the old record, which was set in 2009. That was the 2009 Obama stimulus high. That spending high lasted for 9 years. It took us 9 years to surpass that, and we surpassed it in this just concluded fiscal year of 2018. That is the reason why the current economic expansion, the stock market rally continues on, and it is also why a lot of mainstream economists and market observers are completely baffled when they look at the duration of the economic expansion and the bull market that we are in. They are believers in, many of them, what's called a business cycle. They believe that business cycles just somehow kind of come about organically and with a certain amount of periodicity. And it hasn't happened, and they're left scratching their heads, and they completely overlook or ignore the fact that since 2009, we have seen $4 trillion plus in government spending every single year. That appears to be the magic number, or the number that is capable of sustaining an expansion. Now, prior to 2009, and if you remember, 2009 we were in the midst of the financial crisis. Markets froze up, everything, that we were in the Great Recession. And the response was, we all know, the central bank response, the Fed's response, was to engage in quantitative easing and cutting interest rates to zero and providing liquidity, which is its function. That is why it was created as a lender of last resort. It didn't do that right at the onset. It waited and waited, and then when it started to get involved, it was getting involved on a very limited basis. The whole thing could have been stopped dead in its tracks very early on if the Fed really carried out its job. But Bernanke was very slow to move, but once he did, and once he opened the spigot, so to speak, then at least the financial part of the crisis abated. But you still had the after effect, which was the real effect, the recession that hit the economy. And then the stimulus came. And by the way, I did a chart book back in 2012. At the time, it was picked up by Business Insider. That's a very popular website. And it had over 1 million views. But I went through all the metrics graphically on the economy, things like industrial production and employment and retail sales and factory orders and all that stuff. I went through all those metrics, and you really saw from the minute the stimulus was enacted, it was like a V bottom. Everything was going down, and then it turned back up. Now, why is $4 trillion plus important? Because prior to 2009, prior to that stimulus, the U.S. federal government was spending about 2.7, 2.8 trillion annually. So it was a massive increase. Not quite a doubling, but it was a massive increase. What's that? Maybe about 60% increase in spending, and that just turned everything around. And since then, we have been $4 trillion plus, and this year just concluded is $4.71 trillion. That is an all-time record high of spending. Now, two things I want to say. Number one, as long as this continues, the expansion and the stock market rally is going to continue. And don't forget, and don't be fooled, I should say, by the Fed rate hikes, because that is another form of fiscal support. The government is a net payer of interest, so when interest rates go up, and by the way, interest payments that the government pays out is now one of the biggest line items of government outlays, all right? 200, I believe the figure is around 260, maybe 280 billion. Yeah, I have it every week in my report, MMT Trader. I have all the breakdown of the major line items of expenditure. So as interest rates go up, that's more money that flows to income. Of course, not equally to everybody, but it does flow to national income. This year, a just passed budget includes increases again in defense spending. So we are going to see at least the same amount of spending, if not more. I say that with one caveat, and that is the November elections. If the Democrats get elected, we could see a different budget outlook. But for now, you better believe that it's going to be the same, if not more, magnitude of government spending, so everything stays intact. Now, what happens with this? We see one of the consequences is, one of the negative consequences, I should say, is the rise in inflation. It's been relatively slow, this rise, but it has been absolutely observable. And it started off back in December of 2015 with the Fed reversing course on interest rates. The ongoing expansion in government spending, that of course accelerated this year. It's going to continue to accelerate. So all this stuff, by the way, I cover all this stuff in my report, MMT Trader. I'm the only one who follows this real time. These numbers come out every single day. So we are not looking at, my subscribers are not looking at 30-day behind data or quarterly data. We're looking at it every single day. We look at the minute day-to-day changes in these spending flows, and this is what drives everything. This is what drives everything. So if you want to be on top of the game, you really should sign up for a 30-day free trial of MMT Trader. Again, I am the only one who does this sort of analysis, who I take the concepts of MMT and I combine them with a strategic investment and trading approach. And of course, the most important thing is the mental game aspect. Anyone who has been with me for any length of time knows that the mental game aspect is crucial. It is of utmost importance. It is the element, defining element, that will determine whether you will be successful or not. You could have the best information in the world. You could have inside information. If you don't have mental game, you're not going to make money. Anyway, that's it for this video. My last video was on the fight coming up on Saturday night. I can't wait for that. It's going to be awesome. My money's on Khabib. And the money is flowing. The fiscal flows are there. We're going to have another big year as long as the spending remains at current levels, and I don't see any change in that unless it is politically motivated, and that may come after the November elections. But we have time to see what that outcome is, and once we do see that outcome, we'll see the numbers daily. We'll see them before anybody else, right? I was the one here, the first one to say when the deficit ran up to 870 billion, nobody had that. It came 2 weeks later in zero hedge, and they usually scoop everybody. I had that first. All my subscribers had it first. All right, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.